Hello, this is Alan Winde, Premier of the Western Cape, and really great to be with you.
What has your risk approach been in the second wave?
I think approaching risk has always been something that's been, I think, almost inbred in me from my first days as being an entrepreneur. You're always trying to analyze what the risks are, and I think here in business, in government, we also always have to analyze those risks, both as an administration but also politically. And I think in this wave we've seen lots of risk in the system. And I think what's been exciting for me is to see the response of our government, where we've picked up those risks and how we've managed to respond and really mitigate much of those risks. Some of them real crisis time when everyone's got together and mitigated. Another where we've actually looked long term and said, well, we're going to see loss of jobs, and we're going to need to step in from feeding people, whether it be at our schools or other programs that we've run with voucher systems. I think risk is probably something that is almost inculcated in the way that I think, and it really has been something that I think we've managed pretty well during both the first and second wave of COVID-19. Right now, our big risk is vaccines, and there's a whole lot of work happening there as well.
How is the province evaluating risk on a regular basis?
Well, I think obviously we've got a whole risk management system in place, and yesterday the DG and I had a meeting with our internal auditors, and you end up with looking at risk. I think it's something that's just like good governance. It's a part of it, and it's about how do we have it as a habit. And so of course we've got the systems in place, we've got the mechanisms and the people, but you've also always got to have that as part of one of your habits of good governance.
How does your ongoing risk assessment of the pandemic in the province dovetail with that of national effort?
I think sometimes, that's where we see differing approaches between provinces and national government. I also think national government sometimes in this arena have tried to be too much of the big brother. They have not wanted to look at differentiated approaches, especially when a province that's governed by a different political party comes along with different suggestions. But I think also, I think about this last differentiated approach where the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape were both involved up front. And I think it started to exercise the minds a lot. Of course, there is always those risks, but I also really try to work through them and around them to get people to change their minds and to think differently.
What are the critical risk factors the province is looking at going forward, and with an expectation of a third wave in winter?
So I think right now, if we think about the rest of this year and the blunt instruments that we've used, first of all, that have closed and opened the economy as we've sort of moved along with this virus in the last year, I think we're trying to find more nuanced ways of dealing with the management of the virus and the spread, and specifically the impact or the risk around the impact on our trauma units, on our IC units and our hospitals in general. But I think also the impact and the risk to our economy. We've got growing poverty. So right now it's about saying, what does that new normal look like? And how do we build a new normal? You would have seen now in our first approach, post this sort of flattening of the curve, and we're seeing the decline of the second wave, is now requesting discussion at a national level to reduce some of the restrictions that have been put in. But we're not saying let's go immediately back to a full open economy, especially around the liquor sales. Let's actually find a happy medium. Let's keep curfew as a tool. Let's not go all the way back. Let's monitor it, but open up a little bit more. So I think that's the way that we've got to look at it. And I've actually asked the economics team and the health team to come up with a model that says this is what a new normal is going to look like, so that we don't have to be a yo-yo or this pendulum which focuses on health and then we've got to quickly rush off and go and focus on the economy again. We've got to find a happy medium that really helps us get through this third wave, fourth wave, while vaccines come in and other different medical approaches come in, and a combination of all of those creating herd immunity and some of the natural herd immunity that we've also seen developing through our province between the first wave and the second wave.
The last question, specifically, how are you looking at risk in terms of the vaccine rollout, and how will you work with central government?
So, of course, this is where we do have a little bit of a differential. I'm busy analyzing the supply side of vaccines into our system. We have seen that there's been a couple of hiccups on getting South Africa high up on the list of vaccines available to our citizens. So right now, while we're seeing millions and millions of vaccines being rolled out in other parts of the world, we're seeing just about no vaccines available to us as yet. We've got a promise of the first 1.5 million vaccines coming for our frontline workers coming this month, but here we are on the 20th of the month. We don't know what day they're going to arrive, how many we're going to get for the Western Cape. So it's very difficult to plan. That's a massive risk just on its own. And then, of course, we've got a vague sort of number saying another 20 million vaccines coming. I look at COVAX and I go and have a look at the supply side to COVAX, who's supposed to be supplying us, and I see 700 million vaccines on order for COVAX, who are going to be providing vaccines to 91 countries around the world. I see a massive risk there as well. I look at how many countries have bought way more vaccine than they really need. And so how do I say, well, is there an opportunity there? Can we engage with those countries to say we would like to have some of your excess? But of course, this whole arena, that's not just in the supply where there's risk. I think there's also a big risk in actual rolling out the vaccination process, making sure that everybody in our province has access to vaccines, no matter whether you live in a city, in a town, in a hamlet, in a little village way out somewhere in one of the rural areas of our province. Everyone must have that opportunity. And so that whole logistics exercise is a massive exercise. We need to be able to know how to get the vaccine to you. How are we going to actually log? What's the data? Building a dashboard of when you get that vaccine, where you get it, what kind of vaccine. Then are you going to get your follow-up second dose? Because the first vaccines we're getting are going to need 2 doses. How do we make sure that we tick you off, that we give you a message to be back again in 28 days' time at 10 o'clock to get your second dose? Because without having the second dose, then we have another risk. The efficacy of the vaccine is not going to be good enough to build the herd immunity. So it's massive, it's complex. The team is really working hard to find ways in which we can be excellent at getting this rollout in place. And we've got an opportunity to learn. We're seeing in some first world countries where they themselves are finding huge problems in rollout of the vaccine. At least our opportunity is, let's not make the same mistake, so let's learn from them. But all of these talk about risks, and we've got to analyze those risks, make sure we mitigate. And so at the end of the day, I want to have a slick rollout of vaccines in this province that we can really be proud of, like we've done so many other things, our field hospitals, our innovation in getting meds to people, the way we've fed people during lockdown, so many things that we've managed to get right, understanding the pressure and the risks on us, but also at the same time coming up with those innovations and really putting our best foot forward, and as a government, as the whole of government, really showcasing that we're there for the citizens of our province, and we really do our very, very best.